George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
A huge market in St. Petersburg is burning fiercely. Was it the result of a Ukrainian attack? We'll bring more later. And what exactly is Barack Obama doing and saying to Keir Starmer in his repeated visits to Downing Street? Is he representing a shadow government of the United States of America? And what was said by the three Musketeers and Vladimir Zelensky in the very same Downing Street just the other day? It's all coming up. All that and more on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
If that huge fire in a huge market in St. Petersburg is the result of Ukrainian attack, there'll be hell to pay overnight in Ukraine. We'll bring you more news as it comes in. I want to raise an issue that nobody much else seems to be concerned about, but I've been noticing that nobody other than Volodymyr Zelensky has been in number 10 Downing Street more this year than Barack Obama. These world leaders, well, not quite so much. I mean, Volodymyr Zelensky isn't even the president of Ukraine, whatever is left of it. He ran out of road when his term expired a year and a half ago, and Barack Obama was last in office 10 years ago. He left office in the January of 2016, so virtually 10 years ago. And yet he's in and out of Downing Street like a yo-yo. What exactly is going on? I'll be asking the learned judge, Napolitano, later in the show, what could be the reason for this? Is it to do with the manifest failures of the Keir Starmer administration? Is Barack Obama playing the same role for Keir Starmer as he played for Joe Biden, a kind of human auto pen? Is it to do with imminent legal action against Barack Obama over the Russiagate hoax, which of course originated in London with the Steele dossier? It was a clear attempt to wreck the presidency of Donald J. Trump in 2016, and it was a British operation. Not entirely, of course. The British were operating with their assets in Ukraine, and a British soldier, a 27-year-old lieutenant, was killed there in what the British MOD described as a tragic accident. But as he was from the parachute regiment, it's kind of difficult to see what he was doing there in the first place. But the British used their assets, of course, in Russia. They used assets in Ukraine, and they used the biggest asset of them all, the deep state of the United States of America, which was in a state of total panic and a determination to utterly sabotage any possibility of a Donald Trump presidency. And that started before he even won the election. Barack Obama was spying on the Trump camp in complete defiance of US law long before Trump actually unexpectedly triumphed. And it may very well be that Donald Trump's Justice Department, after all, they're not doing much else. Epstein, who's Epstein, is now focused on bringing to book the culprits of the Russiagate hoax. Russia, Russia, Russia. That's spread now, of course. Yvette Cooper, the British Home Secretary, in a stentorian address to a press conference, I think it was in Whitehall the other day, was naming individual Twitter accounts which she claimed was connected to Russia. I don't know if they are, don't know if they are not. Rybar was the name of it. I know because I've actually seen and even retweeted Rybar. Looks like pretty kosher information for me. But of course, for the British, true information is ipso facto disinformation, is ipso facto the Russian state, and must be banned. So Rybar is now sanctioned. I don't know if he or she, Mr. or Mrs. Rybar, will be all that concerned about it, but it's another step on the, another milestone on the long march of the British state to a state of tyranny. But back to Barack Obama. He's the origin, and he couldn't openly use the American secret services, so he subcontracted it to the British. The British are at the heart of more things than you would imagine. So maybe Donald Trump is intending on taking legal action against Obama. That would certainly be quite unprecedented, but, well, everything in the Donald Trump administration is unprecedented. Maybe Trump is so hot on the heels of Obama that Obama intends to claim political asylum in London so that he is beyond the reach of the Trump administration. There are reports that Obama has actually bought a house in London. So maybe it's something to do with that. Or maybe it's an attempt to create a shadow American government in complete defiance of the law. In fact, would be an act of treason if true. It may very well be that given the trials and tribulations of the European-US relationship now, on everything from Ukraine to Elon Musk's X platform and the swinging fines that were imposed on Musk just this week. It may be that Donald Trump is the president in exile of the United States of America. If that were to be true, then clearly Trump is either a cuck who's unable to do anything about it, or Trump is now just nursing his wrath to keep it warm and ready to crack down on Barack Obama when the time is right. Speaking of Downing Street, the three Mouseketeers, Merz, Macron, and Starmer, with barely 30% public opinion poll ratings between them, between all three of them, three men that are roundly hated in their own countries, three men that if the peoples of their country had the opportunity to do so would be swept out of office before you could say Jack Robinson. Now, these three, yet again, staged a council of despair for Zelensky in Downing Street this week. You know, I was just reading that when the Nazis were at the gates of Moscow and the government had relocated east of the Urals, Stalin stayed put. He refused to leave Moscow. Churchill never left central London. Even the then King and Queen never left central London when London was on fire. But where is Zelensky at this vital, existential moment for the Ukrainian people who he has so poorly served? Well, he's in Italy right now. He was in London yesterday. He's anywhere but in Ukraine. And it's very hard to see what he is able to gain from that. The European armories are empty. The European armies are a joke. The European treasuries are broke. And the attempt to solve perhaps all of those problems by stealing Russia's sovereign wealth, banked under contract with the central bank, for example, in Brussels, with the Bank of England, which earlier stole Venezuela's gold, about which more in a minute, the attempt to steal Russia's wealth is not going very well. It's not going very well because, well, the people who hold the money, the government of Belgium, are not actually prepared to break their own laws, break international law, and break the bank by burgling it on behalf of the chiseling little crook of Kiev. So the European leaders, and boy did they look it, I've never seen body language less promising in all of my life. The three musketeers were glum, but wow, Zelensky looked like he'd had a very rough night on the tiles, maybe in Stringfellows, Peter Stringfellows, or something, somewhere like that. The musketeers have gambled everything on Zelensky, everything. Their political future, their country's economic future, their military. They have banked their entire reputation. In fact, you can say they have gambled the very existence of a European continent, which is now splintering within itself. The Czech Republic's Prime Minister, who was sworn in today, is a dedicated opponent of Zelensky and giving him any more money or arms. The Slovakian Premier, ditto. The Hungarian Premier, ditto. The Slovenian President, ditto. And if the Romanians had not been cheated of their election, if it had not been rigged, you could have counted Romania amongst those two. Perhaps the Irish President also, when she gets her feet properly under the table, will begin to demur from the hegemonic demands of Merz, Macron and Starmer. But it's hard to see, given their situation, what left they've got to give to Zelensky. And the rift between the European Union and the United States has become a Grand Canyon and may never be repaired. Nothing will ever quite be the same again in Europe, in the world, after the conclusion of this war in Ukraine. They gambled everything on NATO defeating Russia. They gambled everything on the balkanization of Russia. They gambled everything on smashing the Russian economy, turning the ruble into rubble. And all of these gambles have failed. So most people, most sane people, know not to throw good money after bad. They know not to reinforce failure. They know that when you're in a hole, the first thing you have to do is stop digging. And that's why when people ask me, why are the three musketeers doing this? Well, I answer, there is nothing else that they can do. In Shakespeare's words, they are steeped in blood so far that it is a very, very difficult question whether it's bloodier to go on or to go back. And so they are stuck there, up the creek, without a paddle. Speaking of nautical matters, the American fleet is still steaming across the borders, the frontiers of Venezuela. The American Air Force is illegally overflying Venezuelan sovereign territory. The puppet president that they intend to install, if they can, in Caracas, Machado, was exfiltrated today by the United States government. There was some doubt whether she was going to make it to Oslo to pick up the absurdly named Nobel Peace Prize. She didn't in the end, but she was whisked out of Venezuela by the American government. Now, I just want you to contemplate something. Who knew that the vicious anti-Venezuelan political leader Machado was even in Venezuela? What kind of dictatorship is Maduro running when he allows someone who's been made the Nobel Peace Prize winner so she can be catapulted into the presidency in Miraflores in Caracas, but she's still allowed to live openly in Venezuela? she's still allowed openly to call for a foreign country to bomb her own territory, to attack her own land, to kill her own fellow Venezuelan citizens. What kind of dictatorship is Maduro running there? You're giving dictatorship a bad name, Maduro. She was exfiltrated by the United States this day when she's been calling for an American invasion for years. That's the kind of dictator Maduro is. But no doubt she has been exfiltrated as a further sign that the United States intends to bomb at least Venezuela, to invade at most Venezuela, to conquer, if they can, Venezuela, the Latin American Vietnam. We'll be talking to Larry Johnson, the former CIA and Pentagon panjandrum, about that later in the show. But here's my tuppence worth. I may be the only man on the planet who doesn't believe that Donald Trump is going to attack Venezuela. First of all, because there's absolutely no legal basis for it, and plenty of people who'll take the necessary legal action if any such thing were to happen. Trump does not have the power to attack Venezuela. That power belongs in Congress, and no majority in Congress exists to launch a regime change war in the name of the peace president, and the Congress would be unlikely to endorse it. The courts would be highly likely to punish it. The tables have turned in the United States of America, you see. And people are now making their dispensations because next November, which is not that long away, power will change hands in the United States of America. The Republicans have less chance than a snowball in hell of holding on to control of Congress come November. The second reason why I think that Trump will not do this is just how badly his prelude to it has gone. Again, I'll ask Judge Napolitano on this, but it seems to me an open and shut case that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for War, is guilty of murder. He's guilty of a heinous murder. First, by dropping bombs on unknown ships, small boats, motorboats, that don't even have the range to reach from the coast of Colombia or the coast of Venezuela to reach Miami. They cannot. Boats that are full of people rather than full of drugs. And boats that, if they were carrying drugs, could not carry enough drugs for it to conceivably be worth doing. Thirdly, the killing of these people without even knowing their names, their identity, without any possible scintilla of proof that they are drug running to the United States, and drug running is not in any case a capital offense. And executing someone without knowing who they are, with no evidence presented that they are what you say they are, is now only the half of it. Because video exists of the pitiful sight of two survivors clinging to wooden wreckage after their boat has been bombed by the United States Air Force, and there's a resigned admiral who refused to break all known laws of war, all Geneva Conventions, all laws forbid you to slaughter two survivors from, even the Nazis rarely gunned down survivors of the ships that they had sunk in World War II, and this is not World War II in any case. The Admiral is very clear. He wouldn't do it. Who countermanded the Admiral? Pete Hegseth, Trump's Secretary of State for War. A clear, open and shut case that the Defense Minister of the United States of America is a serial mass murderer. Go figure. Judge Knapp up right now. Stay tuned. I wonder if there's more to it, Anthony. She says not, but might she be preparing for a presidential run?
You very well may, but Americans don't like a quitter. So even if she was starting to speak some truth, we're not going to take that very well.
Fair point. Very, very fair point. But Donald Trump's political position looks to me now extremely isolated. He has destroyed a very considerable part of his most militant base. He hasn't just lost Marjorie Taylor Greene, he's lost Tucker Carlson, he's almost entirely lost Alex Jones, he has substantially lost the support of Steve Bannon, and many, many others are beginning to question his judgment, and some even to question his continuing fitness for office. So he's in a very weak position. But if he wanted to, he could take the bull by the horns on this Ukraine question. He could say, stop sabotaging me. Don't think by leaking things you're going to divert me. I'm serious. I'm ending this war, and I'm certainly going to end America's involvement in this war.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Here's the poll tonight. Will Imran Khan die in jail? I'm not responsible for that poll. I consider it in very poor taste. But 13,621 people have voted on it. Will Imran Khan die in jail? Yes or no. You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, and remember, subscribe to my channel, and on my Patreon page if you are amongst the vanguard, the creme de la creme. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Well, I've raised a number of judicial, quasi-judicial questions already for the eminent judge, the man who should be on the Supreme Court, if not the Secretary of State for Justice. It's Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of Judging Freedom. Honourable Napolitano, thank you for joining us. I did raise a couple, maybe two, maybe three, matters that I think you're better able to deal with than me in my monologue. First one, let me start seriatim, is what exactly is Barack Obama doing with 4 visits to 10 Downing Street in the last year? Is he forming a shadow government? Is he doing for Starmer what he did for Biden, a human auto pen? Or is he worried that Trump is about to launch legal action against him, maybe even seeking sanctuary in London, as in centuries past many used to do?
Wow, I did not know of this. First of all, George, good evening to you, and thank you very much for inviting me to your show. Your viewers by now know that next to the word, the phrase personal courage in Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, there's a picture of George Galloway, because you You personify personal courage and intellectual honesty, and it's a treat for me to be your friend and colleague. I was unaware of Barack Obama visiting number 10 Downing Street, and I can only speculate, as you are. It would be very difficult for Trump's Justice Department, so-called Justice Department, to prosecute him for anything, in part because of an immunity decision, in my opinion, wrongfully decided, but nevertheless decided. It applies to all presidents, which renders them immune from prosecution for criminal behavior for any official acts undertaken while they were in office. Secondly, the statute of limitations on federal crimes in America is 5 years, and he, of course, has been out of office for more than 5 years. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe Jared Kushner was with him and they're planning a land deal. I'm being sarcastic. Britain, of course, does have an
he has actually made a
treaty.
land deal, Judge. He's actually bought property in London. And other than Zelensky, he's been in number 10 more often than any other world leader. I hear, of course, what you say about the statute of limitations and any official act carried out while he was in office. But what about an unofficial act, Your Honor? What if Obama was the man who commissioned the Steele dossier, for example? What if Obama was unofficially operating through British intelligence to crank up the Russiagate affair? Would that be covered by immunity?
Well, no, it wouldn't be covered by immunity, but it would be protected by the statute of limitations. Listen, Obama, you remember this. This is how you and I came to each other's attention. Engaged the CIA to engage GCHQ. Your viewers know what that is, to spy on Mr. Donald Trump when he was running against Hillary Clinton. And when I revealed that on Fox News, British authorities put tremendous pressure on Rupert Murdoch to fire me. He refused to do so. And I continued my merry way on Fox for another 5 or 6 years. This was all instigated by Barack Obama and his director of the CIA, Jack Brennan, while I was being skewered by British and American press. 4 GCHQ agents went to The Guardian in London and said, that judge in New York who said that we were spying on Trump, he's right. And that, of course, called off the dogs. But the dogs, so to speak, were dispatched by Barack Obama. There's obviously something going on. If he's been there more times than anybody but Zelensky, then something is going on. It's hard for me to put my finger on it, sure, because he can't run for re-election, and it's nearly impossible for him to be prosecuted for anything he did while in the White House. Now, if he's done something that's arguably criminal in the past 5 years, I don't even know what that would be.
He said, of course, some mishaps with the domestic staff and so on, but we've no way of knowing whether there was any criminal activity in that case. But the other thing I raised, and I'd love your expertise on it, Your Honor, I've been studying quite carefully the issue of the bombing of these fishing boats. And I'm going to put to you, sir, that it's an open and shut case. Hegseth is guilty of the crime of murder.
So is Donald Trump. So is Admiral Bradley. So is everybody beneath Bradley who followed the orders. It could not be clearer. It is a federal crime in the United States of America, and if done by the military, a war crime, and if outside the United States of America, an international crime to kill an unarmed non-combatant. Period. End of story. There's no defense for it. The Nuremberg trials made it clear that I did what I was told is not a defense. Everyone in the military on day 3 in basic training is taught not to obey an illegal order. A child knows ordering a person to murder an unarmed non-combatant is itself an illegal order. I couldn't agree with you more, George. It's a closed case. Why do you think the Republicans in the House of Representatives today shut down their investigation of it? Because they know if the American public sees the tapes of these murders, the uproar against Trump will be tumultuous, perhaps even too much for him to bear. He'll probably fire Hegseth and replace him with J.D. Vance's Yale Law School roommate, who is currently the Secretary of the Army, a person of like mind but more temperate disposition. It won't change the policy of the United States, but it'll dial down the heat that is caused by Secretary Hegseth's personality. Listen, I know Pete Hegseth very well. We worked together for 8 years at Fox News. I sat next to him on the so-called curvy couch on Fox and Friends. We are former hosts of that show, but he is absolutely not qualified for this job, and his interpretation of what Trump said or his order to the admiral to kill them all was plain English, an order to commit murder.
Now, staying for a moment on matters Venezuelan, although, of course, some of the hapless victims of these murders were not even Venezuelan. Some of them have quite clearly been established to have been Colombian fisher folk. But staying on Venezuelan matters, I see the Department of Homeland Security boasted, I would say, that they had exfiltrated Maria Machado, the putative puppet president of Venezuela, if Trump were to succeed in his Venezuela policy. They exfiltrated her out and have her somewhere where that they describe as safe. But my first question is, what kind of dictator is Maduro that Machado was living and operating openly in Venezuela for all of this time? But my second, more important question would be, does this make an attack on Venezuela now more or less likely in your view?
I'm sorry to say it makes it more likely in my view. Look, the attack on Venezuela without a declaration of war from the Congress would itself be a war crime, because it would be the military of one country, the United States, killing civilians in another country. Second, the United States Congress could not declare war on Venezuela under 3 treaties that it signed, not the least of which is the UN treaty, because Venezuela poses zero threat to the national security of the United States. And so the Congress has limited itself from declaring war to those countries that have attacked the United States, are about to attack the United States, or pose an imminent threat to the national security of the United States. Venezuela poses no threat to the United States. Venezuela is not an exporter of controlled dangerous substances to the United States. Other countries are, but Venezuela is not. This is all about oil for Donald Trump. It's all about control of Latin America for Marco Rubio. If they attack Venezuela and succeed in removing President Maduro, it'll be the beginning of a major war. I won't call it a world war because it'll be confined to this hemisphere, but it'll be the first time the United States of America is fighting wars against more than one Latin American country. If this becomes a land war, they'll be bogged down more so than they were in Vietnam. And when American boys and girls come home in body bags, the public will turn on Trump even more than it already has.
Yes, I suspect that's absolutely correct. Finally, Your Honour, the Other big, if you like, legal, quasi-legal anyway, issue that arose this week was the extraordinary decision by the European Union to fine Elon Musk 125 million euros for the crime of not agreeing to censor European users in the lawful expression of their honestly held views and legally held views. This extraterritoriality is quite a stretch, isn't it? Twitter
it sure is
owned. Yeah, go on.
I don't know how this is going to end up. I'm sure he has assets somewhere in Europe that exceed the amount of the fine that they'll try and seize. But let's face it, George, and you are living proof of this. The freedom of speech is dead in Europe. It's dying in the United States, but it has already died in Europe. And this is just a catastrophic, monumental example of it, where the EU wants to steal $100 million from the world's richest man. Knowing him, he'll probably negotiate some sort of a settlement, which by your standards and mine and the people watching and listening to us will be a tremendous amount of money, but it'll be less than the amount of the fine. And for a guy that is about to earn $1 trillion, it'll be a drop in the bucket. That does not make it lawful. That does not make it sanguine. That actually makes it worse because he should be able to fight this in a court of law. He's not being punished for his speech. He's being punished for failing to punish the speech of others that the government hates and fears. Who gives a damn what the government hates and fears?
Exactly. It's a kind of badge of honor. As it happens, I myself am suing X in the Dublin High Court, which is where their brass plate is, and the case is at quite an advanced stage now. He hasn't sought to negotiate any kind of settlement with me, so he'll be facing me on the floor of the Dublin High Court. But the fact remains that the Europeans are more and more brazenly intimidating, threatening, and now punishing American tech companies for things that are not a crime in the United States, where they are based. Is Trump going to do anything about this? Is he going to stand up for Musk?
I wish he would. Thus far, he hasn't. His relationship with Musk is a weird one. It's a love-hate relationship, and apparently changes day by day. But Trump would win the support back of a good chunk of MAGA, which he has lost. You just articulated some of the leaders of MAGA who have turned on him. If he were to do something like that, not because MAGA loves Elon Musk. Musk himself is an odd character, as you know, but because the case against Musk is just plain wrong. The government is absolutely wrong to be doing this, and Trump could probably stop it with a couple of phone calls. We'll see if he does it.
Your Excellency, Judge Andrew Napolitano, as always, a tour de force. See you soon, I hope. That's Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of Judging Freedom. If you've not watched Judging Freedom, you really, really should. You're missing a treat, especially when Gerald Celente is on it as a guest. Let me take a quick break, and then it's your call, starting with Walter in Blackpool on Venezuela. After this short break, stay tuned. Fabulous. Two great calls in a row there. One from California, one from Orlando. I think that Japan is walking on extremely thin ice in the provocations that they are currently allowing the US to manipulate them into making. I've spent a lot of time in China. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. There is visceral feelings about Japan in China of all of the countries of the world, China will never, ever, ever, ever forgive what Japan did to the Chinese people. They murdered more than 20 million Chinese. The war, which for us started in 1939 and for you started considerably more than that, further on than that. Japan invaded China in 1931 and didn't leave until their defeat in 1945. They further invaded other parts of China in 1936 and they killed 20 million Chinese people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go straight to Walter in Blackpool on Venezuela. I told you we are the Open University of the airwaves. Global we are. Walter in Blackpool, welcome.
Thanks very much, George, for having me. Now, I thought you were being a bit naive when you thought that considerations of international or even national law would prevent Trump and his administration from initiating military action against Venezuela, because it's not only the practical considerations that Judge Napolitano has mentioned, you know, the very physiognomy of the Venezuela landscape. And let's face it, Venezuela is a much larger country than we're allowed to portray on those rather imperialist atlases that we've always been seen. But also, I think that any military action against Venezuela will unleash a load of unofficial or liberatory armies and people from South America all over the subcontinent to come to the assistance of Venezuela and to repel the American invaders. Now, I think that this would, once and for all, put to death this highly discredited theory, this Monroe theory, that regards the South Americans as the United States' backyard. And I think would be a heavier consideration than any legal or pseudo-legal considerations that might play at the back of Trump's mind.
Well, I know, of course, Walter, that Trump doesn't give a toss about the law. But I predicated my point on the change of fortunes in November's midterm elections. And they'll be looking for a means to impeach and, if possible, drive Trump out of office. And what would be better as a reason than that Trump had committed multiple criminal offenses against U.S. and international law in the prosecution and the run-up to the prosecution of a deeply unpopular war, which I guarantee you it quickly will become. Because even if they were able to install, but they'd have to helicopter her in to the Miraflores, this stooge, Machado, she would not be able to govern. Venezuela is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of armed guerrillas right now. And they are all ideologized. They will never, I mean, if they have one identity, Venezuela, it's a rejection of the subjugation of Latin America by its North American neighbor. This is the land of Bolivar. And they're not going to sit back and take any regime change imposed by Washington. That's even if he's able to impose it. Thanks, Walter. Comments on YouTube. You can scan the QR code now on the screen. Keep it clean. I'll read it out. Gokana K8446. Trump and the invaders will never pass. Greetings from Turkey. Alex Garas says they should arrest anyone suspected of having drugs on them. No murder than on a suspicion. More crimes against humanity from the US. Ricardoist says the boat that was going to Suriname was going in the opposite direction to the United States. A very good point indeed. Piano Man says, seems every leader the UK, US, EU dislikes is either a communist or a socialist or a Muslim or all three. Anthony Aboud sends $30, Australian dollars. Thank you, Anthony. I'm listening to you from Australia. Your show is definitely the University of the Airwaves. How very, very kind. Let's go to Germany. Tough place to be nowadays, especially when your name's Malik. Malik in Germany on Imran Khan and the Epstein files. Go ahead, Malik.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. I would like to talk about Imran Khan and Epstein file. And I think some of us know that what ordeal Imran Khan is going through. And Epstein file seems to have become a Pandora's box. I don't know if you have come across one of the emails in which Epstein is talking about Imran Khan. And he's talking about him as being more dangerous than Erdogan and Khomeini and Putin. So this shows that this global criminal system put him out and they have put him in the jails. But I'm going to condemn the 250 million people of Pakistan. They show no ethical, moral, or civil courage to get him out. And I just don't know what can be more done about this thing. Thank you.
Well, Malik, I think that's entirely unfair. There have been demonstrations of millions of people throughout Pakistan that have been met with hails of gunfire and brutal, savage treatment from the army and the police in Pakistan, working for the stooge government, the usurper government, and the courage of Imran Khan's sisters was visible overnight. His elderly sisters, if I may put it that way, to the ladies concerned, his elderly sisters were literally water gunned down in the cold and already soaking wet streets of Pakistan last night. They were maintaining a peaceful vigil outside of the prison in which their brother has been held for years on a multiplicity of utterly bogus, fake, hoax charges. And suddenly the water cannon of the stooge regime gunned them down with water. And these elderly ladies were swept off their feet in the hail of ice-cold water cannon on a bitterly cold Pakistani evening. So I don't accept your accusation. The people of Pakistan are striving valiantly, and some of us, certainly me included, internationally, who have a voice, are doing everything that we can to free Imran Khan. Now, a big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the MOATS.tv website. That's MOATS.tv. Reinhold Sturm, Trevor Talbot, Rashad Hussein, Amira Kataria, and James Glass. Please join them in lights, in the wall of fame, and make your donation this evening. MOATS.tv. Let's take a call from Doncaster. Assam has a point to make on labour and inflation. Go ahead, Assam.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway, and Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me. Sir, I have a very simple question, and there is some concern from the local community regarding the inflation. For example, like few people, they came to me, they said they're just one bedroom flat, and they are having electricity every month, like 600, 700 pound worth of bill. So there is concern going on in the people in the community. And definitely, we believe this Labour government, they are making everything tough for the common person, to be honest with you. A single bedroom flat.
I mean to that, and they not just in Doncaster, the length and breadth of the country, people are paying 4 times more for their electricity and gas than they were just 4 years ago. And the reason for that is that our government, Rishi Sunak first, followed with gusto by Keir Starmer, have done everything that they can to confront the Russian Federation, including banning the importation of Russian oil and gas. We had the Nord Stream 2 pipeline pumping for years cheap oil and gas into the European Union and bringing the price of energy down for all of us, including us here in Britain. So the role played by this Labour government in switching Britain to a wartime economy, which is what they describe it as, has of course beggared, impoverished and frozen huge numbers of our own people. But that's not the whole story. The green mania, the net zero mania of this Labour government, and particularly the madman Miliband, who's in charge of energy, a messianic Elmer Gantry, touring the world in private jets and in first-class scheduled flights to instruct the rest of us that we have to stop burning firewood. We have to stop having a boiler and have a not-so-heat pump instead, telling us that we'll have to get rid of our motor cars. Not that there's any danger of him getting rid of his. This greenery, wokery and quackery is, of course, a hallmark of Keir Starmer's Labour government. And thirdly, we have our own oil. We have our own oil and gas, but we've capped the wells in the interests of net zero madness. And so we're importing other people's oil and gas, and coal, for that matter. You're in the Doncaster coal field, where 1,000 years of coal was flooded and locked up forever in Davy Jones's locker when we could have been burning it. And to those who say, well, we shouldn't be burning it, well, we are burning it. It's just that we're importing it from other countries. It's called madness, Assam, and it's New Labour madness. Now, the podcast, as I keep you up to date with, is breaking all records. Gayatri is celebrating this. We are in the top 10 podcasts in Indonesia, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt and Nigeria. Well, actually, we're really big in Nigeria for reasons which will now be obvious. We're in the top 40 for politics in India, New Zealand, Malaysia, and we're in the top 50 in the United Kingdom. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning that QR code on the corner of your screen. Now, let's go to Dennis in New York on transnational capitalism. Go ahead, Dennis.
Hello again, George. First, I'd like to thank you and respond in kind. The last time we spoke, I had some criticism, and you responded to my criticism by thanking me for being polite and discreet. And I want to thank you for responding in kind in a very polite and discreet way to my criticism. I think that was very helpful. And I just want to thank you for that. It shows what a gentleman you are.
Thank you.
The more I look at this, the better I understand it. I think it would be very helpful if we can bring some larger perspective to all of these things that we're trying to figure out, and all of these different pieces to the puzzle that we're trying to arrange. I believe that the reason that you were sequestered there at the airport along with Gayatri and questioned and held for 4 hours is the same reason ultimately that the Russians were forced to prosecute the war in Iran, in the Ukraine. The same reason that the Palestinians are prosecuting the genocide the Israelis are prosecuting the genocide in Palestine. The war in Iran, the same reason that Trump is prosecuting, hopefully not, a war in Venezuela. And all of this has to do ultimately with the way that the international financial and governmental structures are being reorganized to subvert the sovereignty of the nation state as enshrined in the Peace of Westphalia, which I'm sure you know the history of that. So whenever you see Jared Kushner, Kirill Dmitriev, all the big finance boys, the sovereign wealth funds of the world, the BlackRocks of the world, transnational capital is the name of the game. And don't think that Putin and Z don't understand that. Don't think that the Saudis don't understand that. Don't think that the Qataris don't understand it. Don't think that the Iranians don't understand it. Everything that we're experiencing and what you experienced at the airport is a civilization, the European civilization, in decline as a result of the changes that are going on in relation to how global finance is being reorganized. And if we could just kind of keep that perspective, it'd make it a whole lot easier to understand a lot of the things that are going on.
Well, very well put. You're obviously a man who thinks deeply about things and seeks to gain a vantage point to get a better perspective. People, bruisers like me, engaged in unarmed combat almost all day and almost all night and for more than 50 years, can sometimes lose perspective and become over-focused on the individual battle, on the individual foe with whom one is engaged kinetically in bare-knuckle, short-sword political fighting. And I'm inclined to agree with you that something big is happening. Something civilizational is happening. It seems abundantly clear to me that the criticisms being made of Europe, don't get me wrong, I love Europe. I haven't been in it for quite a while, but I love it. I miss it. Europe is a wonderful place to live, or at least was a wonderful place to live, and is now only a wonderful place to live if you have the means to live a very different life from the great majority of your compatriots or your fellow denizens, residents of European countries. It's a great pain for me to see the decline, maybe even the demise of Europe. Europe is not what it was in every single respect that you care to mention. It's not having ruled the roost in the world for close on 500 years, having conquered all of the rest of the world at one time or another, from Portugal to Britain. The empires that were launched from Europe conquered all before them and ruled long, much longer than the Roman Empire itself. But the civilizational death, the strange death, has not been from without. Nobody attacked us. Nobody invaded us. We cannot blame an external actor for this civilizational decline, for this near-death experience that we are now in. This was all our own doing. This was the doing of the power and the capitalists in our own continent who preferred to export their capital in search of people who would work for less and longer the deindustrialization of our own countries, and that deindustrialization has now accelerated faster than the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. This is now a motoring to disaster that our countries are involved in. And of course, we are amongst the paraphernalia that we are discarding, the rule of law, our industrial past, is civil liberty. I have no flag to fly for Elon Musk. But in the battle of Elon Musk against the European Union, I stand with Elon Musk. The fact that someone like me and my wife could be suspected of national security offences, which is the basis of a stop on under the Terrorism Act, is so monstrous. It's even now still difficult to believe. Tucker Carlson just put a clip of his interview with me out on his TikTok, which I recommend to you. It's a very cleverly done clip, and I'm grateful to Tucker for it. There it is, I think, coming up now. Yes, there it is. Now, the fact that Tucker is aghast, can't understand, please explain to me, he said, how could this happen? Well, it now turns out from Yvette Cooper's statement yesterday that their definition of causing harm to national security includes, it's broadly drawn, it ends at terrorist action, but it starts at what she calls disinformation. Now, of course, one man's disinformation is another man's information, and vice versa. When she says that we are in the face of disinformation, that merely means information that she doesn't like. Information that contradicts the state's official information. Well, if democracy does not include the right of someone like me, 7 times elected to the British Parliament, leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, a prominent broadcaster, if I am not allowed to give my interpretation of the information, and it's to be called disinformation, and that's to be criminalized as a national security crime under the Terrorism Act, Britain is officially dead. Dennis, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to say all that. Now, there's a Workers' Party live event tomorrow night, Campaign Talk. They're really good, actually. Mark Belshaw, terrific young find, with my good friend Farouk Ahmed, councillor in Rochdale, and Dr. Bob Gill, the champion of the National Health Service. Starts at 9 p.m. on the Workers' Party YouTube channel. Please subscribe to it, follow it, and tune in if you can. Let me take a quick break, and then I'm joined by Larry Johnson, veteran. It's the same age as me. Should I call him a veteran? Of CIA and State Department's Office of Counter-Terrorism, and the founder of the very influential Berg Associates. Coming up next. Stay tuned.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
He had that Clinton thing. His eyes were round and big and smiley, and he was very charming.
He became this incredible pop idol kind of prime minister.
I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
New Labour was backed by the most powerful media interests because they realised he was representing them.
He was caught red-handed trading policy in return for hard cash from a businessman.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a holocaust.
JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war. The man is a war criminal.
Is Tony Blair a war criminal? In my opinion, yes.
Most definitely.
The pursuit of money has become the dominant theme in your life.
All these relationships are, in most people's estimation, corrupt relationships.
No previous Labour Prime Minister has behaved in this shameful, money-grubbing way.
How do you sleep at night? You know, it's that. It's as a person.
Well, just listening to that again, I'm so proud of that film we made, The Killings of Tony Blair. You get it free if you follow us on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. You get that. In fact, you get all of our films, and you get first look at things that I'm able to put your way. I do hope that you may think it's worth supporting. Larry Johnson, I'm not going to call him a veteran again. He's a spring chicken. Larry Johnson knows everything about the intelligence world, about the military, about the military-industrial complex. He's the founder of the influential Berg Associates, and he joins us now. Larry, wonderful to see you again. I must say you always look like George. You're just off the beach in Hawaii, but I know that that's just deep cover. You're the sort of man who likes to leave people guessing where you are. I have the rare and great opportunity to question you about some really very important things, but the first one of them has to be the apparent imminence of a war in Venezuela. The noble, honourable judge, our mutual friend, Andrew Napolitano, just said that the exfiltration of Machado today makes war, sadly, more rather than less likely. It would be illegal. It would be madness. But being illegal and being mad are characteristic of right. Donald Trump these days. Is he going to do it?
I hope not. And I think he's going to be compelled to only try to use air power, which, it's going to kill some Venezuelans, but it's not going to break Maduro. George, I've seen this pattern before. When I was at the CIA back in 1987, and I left there in the fall of '89. I was there for the invasion of Panama, and my branch, the Central America branch, on the Directorate of Analysis, the analyst, a woman named Alicia, she was directly involved in working with the Directorate of Operations, and they were planning a series of for more than a year. They did a number of provocations trying to provoke Manuel Noriega into using military force or doing something in which we could then justify ourselves invading Panama, which we ultimately did. So the same pattern is being repeated here off the coast of Venezuela, with the important difference that with respect to Panama, we already had the U.S. military present in Panama. U.S. Southern Command, a.k.a. Southcom, was based at Quarry Heights, just outside Panama City, in Panama. And we also had a military presence up in Colón. We don't have that in Venezuela. And the problem or the challenge that Venezuela poses, it's 3 times the size of Vietnam. And George, I'm sure as you recall, during the war in Vietnam, at the height of deployment of U.S. forces in April of 1969, the United States had 543,000 soldiers in Vietnam. And how did that work out? We lost. With more than 500,000 soldiers, we were unable to defeat the South Vietnamese. Well, put ourselves now in Venezuela, 3 times the size of Vietnam, and with jungle, higher mountains than what are in Vietnam, much more difficult terrain, borders with Guyana, Brazil, and Colombia, which are, again, anything and anybody could get through there. So this would be an uncontrollable. If the United States is dumb enough to put troops on the ground, I think there will be more body bags coming out of Venezuela than came out of Iraq and Afghanistan combined. It could be that deadly for us. If they drop bombs on Maduro, I think Trump will do that. I don't think Maduro is going to leave. And just as we did with the Houthis in the Red Sea, we'll declare victory and go home.
Well, let's look at the big picture, as I know you have been doing, Larry, and I fixed on every word that you wrote today. The big enchilada, the National Security Survey, which seems to sketch the foreign policy orientation and next steps in the United States. I personally saw one or two good things in that, if he really intends to implement that, which is, of course, an open question. But for the viewers who haven't read your piece today, kindly summarize your take on the new NSS.
The biggest change is the United States is telling Europe, we're going to separate. We're going to start seeing other people. It's like the end of a long-term romantic relationship's come to an end. United States is basically announcing it's going to divorce itself from Europe. Now, that's on paper. Will they actually do it? We'll see. Because I've seen, I had friends who announced they were getting a divorce, and then they stayed married for 2 more years. So that could be that situation. What's interesting is Ukraine gets very short shrift in this, and the basic message is Ukraine is now your problem, Europe. Good luck. We'll help you. If you want any weapons, we're happy to sell it to you. The bellicose threats that previously were directed at Russia and China in the Joe Biden national security strategy that was published in January of 2023, and then the Donald Trump first version that was published back in, December of 2017. Trump now, in this latest version, has moved away from those bellicose, threatening words. Again, it's one thing to write it down in a book. It's another thing to say, what is the actual government policy going to be? And as I'm watching different articles get published, particularly one that appeared in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, detailing how Operation Spiderweb, this elaborate thing that started in December of 23 and was executed on June 1st of 2025, drone attacks on strategic bomber bases inside Russia, excuse me. Well, that information came from the CIA. This wasn't a simple matter of some intrepid reporter going, gee, I'm a little bored today. What am I going to write about? Oh, I know. No. The CIA, I believe, is actively working right now to undermine Donald Trump's effort to disengage from Ukraine, because the CIA is so heavily invested in Ukraine, along with the U.S., now called U.S. Department of War, that I think they're going to try to sabotage any moves that Trump makes to try to extricate himself. And that's why I say the document is one thing, but it's not a game plan for how they're going to play the game. It provides some reference points.
Of course, I accept that, but it is a good plan if implemented, and that's a step forward at least. But you touch on something there, Larry, that is quite hard to understand. I was talking with the judge earlier about Barack Obama's repeated visits to 10 Downing Street, and what those because we're never told what these meetings were about. There seems to be a revolt openly against Donald Trump's foreign policy by the CIA and other agencies on the ground, by retired presidents like Barack Obama. Trump never for a guy that was going to lock them up, he hasn't locked anybody up.
Right. Yeah. Well, and he also selects the wrong people. Remember, he's the one that chose John Bolton as his national security advisor, Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, Gina Haspel, who was absolutely up to her eyeballs working with MI6 in the lead up to the 2016 election to subvert Donald Trump. He names her as the director of CIA. So, Trump's his own worst enemy with respect to some of this. But I think we did get some signals this week that the worm is starting to turn against Ukraine and that Trump is serious about distancing himself. The first was when in Doha at the, I'm not sure what the particular conference was, but Donald Trump Jr. showed up and, boy, lit into Zelensky like a chainsaw going through a bamboo forest. Then Donald Trump came out and said, hey, it's time for elections. Up to this point, we've been willing to go along with the nonsense that, you can't hold elections in wartime. Even though Franklin Delano Roosevelt did it, Winston Churchill did it, Abraham Lincoln did it. And so, that's just a red herring. So the fact that you've got movement on that front and that then certain equipment is not going forward, the Department of War is withholding it. However, the U.S. Congress, which is bought and paid for by the Ukrainians, I am now reliably informed that there are 29 members of the House of Representatives and the Senate who have received multiple millions of dollars apiece. And that money is intended to, buy support. I guarantee you that when this whole investigation is done, you're going to find people like Kaya Kallas, Ruta, and von der Leyen, have been also getting money. I guarantee it.
Well, I'm certainly not going to contradict it. They're not here to defend themselves, of course, but they're welcome to call in if they'd like to rebut that. But, Larry, the turning on Zelensky is now so widespread that things that you and I have been saying to each other and to others over the last 4 years are now routinely said by our biggest critics, the people who called us names and made allegations about us and about our sincerity. They are now saying, the Spectator, on the language issue this day, that calling out, denouncing the Ukrainian ban on the Russian language, spoken by its own people, including by Zelensky. The Economist, the Financial Times, even the New York Times at the weekend. It's now open season on Zelensky. How long can he last?
Yeah, I think the end game started when the initial leak about $100 million, fraud that had occurred within Zelensky's government, and Umarov, had to resign. The actual number, and I know the U.S. Department of War, through its Inspector General, is looking into $48 billion. That's billion with a B, as in boy, not million. That have been diverted through banks in the Baltics, primarily Estonia, and those money then has been moved on into the accounts of politicians and others that using a variety of banks in the Caribbean and the typical offshore money laundering centers. So when that leak took place, that told me, okay, the avalanche is starting, because they could have come out with a lot more. But they're painting. The narrative is now shifting, at least from the Trump standpoint. They're going to paint Zelensky as corrupt, and once you can show that he's corrupt, then it allows the United States to say, well, hey, the guy's corrupt, and he's cracking down on the language of Russian speakers, and he's persecuting the Christian church, the canonical church of Orthodoxy in the Ukraine. And so all of this is setting the stage that they're going to replace him. Now, I'm not schooled in the law in Ukraine, but I'm not sure that Zelensky, General Zelensky, now ambassador to the UK, can simply waltz in and be named president. That's one of the demands that Russia has, is that there has to be a legitimately elected and empowered leader of Ukraine for them to negotiate with. Without that, there will be no agreement and no possibility of a deal.
But does that imply a cessation of hostilities whilst that happens? Because that's one of the things that Zelensky is now. It's his last card. Okay, then, I'm a dictator. I'm prepared to hold elections. I could do it in 30 to 90 days. But the EU and the US will have to guarantee a ceasefire and our security so that we can hold these elections. Are we not actually past that point, Larry?
Oh, absolutely, George. That ship has sailed. The Russians are not going to accept anything less than the recognition by the international community, the de jure, not de facto, the de jure recognition that Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk are now permanently part of the Russian Federation. Russia's not going to stop in place and allow Ukraine to retain part of Zaporizhia or Kherson. Not happening. So that's the deal that's on the table right now is accept the fact that that territory is ours, have new elections in Ukraine, get NATO out of Ukraine, withdraw all NATO presence, period, gone, and then we'll talk about how to have a ceasefire. Until that happens, Russia is going to continue advancing, as it is right now, very rapidly in Dnipropetrovsk. Dnipropetrovsk, for the listeners who aren't familiar with the geography, it's north of Zaporizhia and to the west of Donetsk. And it bumps up against the Dnieper River. Russia is likely to capture that and take full control of Dnipropetrovsk, I think, by the end of February. The similar fates await Kharkiv, which is north of Luhansk, and Sumy, which is to the west of Kharkiv. And then we go down to Nikolaev, which is south of Kherson, towards Odessa, and the taking of Odessa. I don't think Russia's going to stop this and end its military operations until they're fully in control of Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, and Sumy. Because they've offered the deal to Ukraine in the West. Ukraine and Europe refuse to take the deal. Russia says, okay, they're going to press forward with the offensive, and there's not a thing that Ukraine or Europe can do to stop it.
What an extraordinary turn of events. You and I have, I think, been vindicated in the stance that we've taken on this conflict throughout. Maybe the last throw was in Downing Street yesterday. I must say the three Musketeers, Merz, Macron, and Starmer, and Zelensky, they looked particularly glum. Their body language was for men that have been crushed. Do you think there's anything left up the sleeve of the Europeans to wreck this?
Well, let me give you an example or what shows a sign of extreme desperation. The total population of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany combined is 220 million, roughly. The total ground forces, if you could put all the armies together of the UK, France, and Germany, come to a little less than 500,000. They are these three mental midgets. And this is no insult to midgets, but these Lilliputians that pretend to be leaders. Their suggestion is that Ukraine, which now has a total population of 19 million, 1/11, 1/12 of what those three have, they want that Ukraine to have 800,000 troops, which is 300,000 more than they've cobbled together. I mean, what sort of planet are these people living on? And it'd be one thing if they were sitting there on warehouses filled with artillery shells and modern tanks and armored personnel carriers and artillery barrels and drones, but they're not. It'd be one thing if their economies were chugging along and turning out 3-4% growth per year. They're not. And that their debt to GDP ratio was a healthy 20% like it is in Russia. Nope, just the opposite. England's above 100%, France is 116%, and Germany just this week passed a law that allows them to do deficit spending. Because in the past that was, I think the German term is verboten.
Well, there's a lot that used to be verboten that is now de rigueur, to mix my languages. Now, I suppose their last hope, Larry, is to steal Russia's money. Although some people we know, Martianov, for example, he believes they've already stolen Russia's money, and that all of this kerfuffle about permission to do so is moot because they've already stolen it. Russia, if that happens, it not only deals a death blow to these places for sovereign wealth funds of anybody for the future, forever, but it will be retaliated to, won't it? The Russians will seize comparable assets of the complying countries in their world.
Yeah, this is reminiscent. I don't know if you ever saw or familiar with the movie called Dumb and Dumber. It featured a comedian, Jim Carrey, and Jeff Daniels, and they played two individuals who were not what you'd call the brightest light bulbs in the tanning bed. And at one scene in the past, they were carrying this suitcase supposedly filled with millions of dollars. And when they delivered it, the guy opens it up and it's filled with all IOUs. Okay, that's the Europeans right now with the Russian money. Okay, they've got this suitcase filled with IOUs. The problem is Euroclear, this clearinghouse system that was set up, I believe, in like 1968, 69. It was designed that banks and brokerages, they could put their money there, confident that it wasn't going to be stolen and that it would be held, and then transactions were sent where needed as demand came up. Well, the Belgians right now are the biggest stumbling block to the European desire to steal money, even if they've already stolen it. Because given a treaty that they have with Russia, Russia will be able to go to a mediator and secure a judgment that will allow Russia then to begin seizing assets. And I've heard one estimate that there's up to $1 trillion of European assets still in Russia. But the Russians are very legalistic, unlike the West. They make an agreement, by God, they hold it. They don't say, how can we cheat them and steal it? So they're not going to act preemptively. But if France, Germany, and the UK manage to bully their way through or go through with this, they are going to actually pay a real economic price, not just metaphorical, but it will be financial.
Extraordinary. Larry, I hope to see you soon. God bless you, and thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Larry Johnson, veteran of the CIA and the State Department, from the Office of Counterterrorism, and the founder of the influential Berg Associates. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to Gayatri's social media news roundup. Stay tuned. There's a legend on the line in Oklahoma. It's May on Trump. Welcome back, May.
Trump is using a magic 8-ball to make his decision. He apparently has completely lost whatever mind he had to begin with. This is just ridiculous. Does he really think anyone's going to believe that? I'm here to say, and I'm here to join you and everybody else, the emperor has no clothes on. He's as naked as they come. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he got naked with some young people. And that is why he so desperately is trying to kill this whole Epstein thing. And he's just making it worse.
I'm wondering when Donald Trump knew that he was implicated in these Epstein files and what it was that he knew. That's the big question, because he wouldn't have been banging the Epstein drum all this time and then suddenly to pull the rug. That tells me that it was a late decision, that someone came late to Trump to say, you know, you really don't want to be doing that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go straight to California. Who wouldn't? Barry awaits us in California on the impeachment of the Secretary of State for War, Pete Hegseth. Welcome, Barry. What would you like to say?
Wonderful to be on your show again. I want to talk about impeaching whom I call warmonger Secretary of State Hegseth. I write on various publications in California on progressive political environmental articles. I have about 150 on my website. If you'll permit me later, I'll tell that website address. And I'm on TikTok daily. And they still allow certain things like talking about boycotts and strikes. So I'm going to post and repost others' postings about the imperativeness, if that's a word, of impeaching Hegseth, and after the Dems take the House and Senate, not that I'm like the Democrats, I'm agreeing, of impeaching Trump. Now, as you'll agree, the last couple of times that the Democrats impeached Trump, it wasn't for effective reasons because the Dems were guilty of the same crimes. So anyway, I'm hoping that Trump will not end up being a polytetrafluoroethylene, which is Teflon, president, and that we can get him out and then see if the Democrats can actually do something. May I give the website address for my...
Yes, go ahead, Barry, quickly, yeah.
All right, it's free of charge to read. You can donate if you want. It's patreon.com/Barry Barnett. Patreon.com/Barry Barnett, BarryBarnett. Thank you for all the great work you do.
Thank you. Bless you, Barry. Let's go from California to North Wales, where Charlie wants to talk about David Lammy. Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, God, yeah, forgive my resigned sigh every time I hear that name or even crosses my mind. But it's an important point and very relevant to your first guest and in the vein of things you've been talking about tonight. Yeah, I mean, this man's a massively failed foreign secretary, and God knows how he's ended up as justice secretary because he wouldn't recognise justice.
He's the deputy prime minister.
Yeah,
Charlie is the deputy prime minister.
Oh, God. Well, I say he's just saying unqualified for the job doesn't cover it, does it? It's
No.
and the proposals to do away with his. I've heard him pontificating and posturing like a jumped up upstart that he is about trying to do away with the right of us citizens to the right to jury trial, to be judged by our own peers. The cynic in me feels that this is in response to the the thousands of pensioners that have been arrested in Parliament Square and in cities around the UK. In my own case, 88-year-old pensioners over in Aberystwyth the other weekend. It's utterly ridiculous. And the cynic in me tells me that he's manipulating the justice system, and he wants to appoint a single judge to sit and judge over these people who have done nothing wrong except hold up a cardboard sign, which is utterly ridiculous in actually thinking that this is somehow a crime. I just feel it's a slow, slippery slope meddling with the justice system, and this right to jury to be judged by our own peers has been on the statutes for 500-600 years. So I just feel I would appreciate your thoughts on where this is going.
Well, my thoughts are your thoughts, and you've expressed it perfectly well. More than 500 or 600 years, 800 years. It's enshrined in the Magna Carta, that our people have a right to be tried by a jury of their peers. It was one of our best exports to many parts of the world, and we will not go quietly into that good night. The so-called Justice Secretary, the catastrophe of a Foreign Secretary, catastrophe of a Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. David Lammy, a DEI hire if ever there was one, has now embarked on the burning of more than 800 years of British history and British jurisprudence. And the lawyers are going to fight it. The question is, are the people going to fight it? Don't say, well, I'll never be in front of a court. I never thought I'd be held at gunpoint at Gatwick Airport, but I was. Never ever imagine that it can't happen to you. And if you are on trial in front of a jury of your peers, the quality of justice that you will get is immeasurably greater than some appointed judge from a very rarefied section. How shall I put it? Not to disrespect the honourable judges of our land, but by God, they don't have much in common with the rest of us. And they have their own political prejudices. And no matter how pure as the driven snow they might think they are, those prejudices will rear their ugly heads. Brilliant, Charlie. Great that you gave that opportunity. The big demonstration on Saturday against digital ID, because the digital ID system runs out of the same box of anti-democratic shredding of liberty that the Labour government, so-called, is embarked upon. It's just not British. We've never had a system where someone is able to approach you in the street and demand that you show them your papers. Well, we defeated that when Tony Blair first raised it, and we didn't, in the end, have to show our papers. But in the digital age, they've come up with a way that you don't have to show your papers. You're already on screen. Your digital ID will be in the hands of the state, and you will be required to confirm it. Nigel Farage said the other day he's refusing a digital ID. So am I, Nigel. That makes two of us. Now, comments. Behind Enemy Lines says, international crime. The US does not recognize the ICC, so case closed. Two-tap is okay. Actually, it's not okay, and it has nothing to do with the IC. The United States is subject to treaties signed with the United Nations, which make it illegal to do what Hegseth has done. And Donald Trump has enough enemies in the United States, including in the judiciary, as he found out over the last few years. It won't be hard to make it stick. Jeff Mansfield says Trump is under pressure from Rubio and the Cuban gusanos in Florida. If he goes in there, it will indeed be another Vietnam. Nikia says people are still being injured in Laos after the US dropped weapons during the Vietnam War. Does the US pay for their health care or to clear ordnance? If you believe that, I've got a bridge in London I could sell you going cheap. Gilbert Emoff says, follow the money. What's Christie Freeland and George Soros up to in corrupt Ukraine? Good question. John Cohn says the government should be forced to measure aid to Ukraine in Bugattis. That surely be a more accurate way of counting it. It's one of the points made brilliantly by Donald Trump Jr. Actually, he's much better than Donald Trump Sr., if you ask me. He made some great points in Doha, at the Doha debates, but he said he was in Monaco over the summer. Of course he was. And half of the supercars he saw there, including Bugattis, and better, had Ukrainian plates. Now, Morris is in California. Let's hear from Morris. Go ahead, Morris.
You know, George, it looks like we have a similar situation in the United States. We've got a young lady by the name of Kristi Noem. She's head of our Department of Homeland Security. She might be looking at a criminal referral from Judge James Boasberg, who might find her in contempt of his order. When he ordered her to turn those airplanes around when they were taking those people down here to El Salvador, I think it's called Secot Prison, after violating their due process laws, and she decided that she was going to ignore that judge. What's happened is we got a whistleblower by the name of Arez Ravini. Okay, the judge wants to hear from this guy on 1215 or 225 to find out if it's true that they violated the judge's order voluntarily, that they were just not going to respect him. And what they're trying to do, Trump's administration, along with Kristi Noem, is we have a law called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It's only been invoked 3 times. So that's what they're using right now to deny these people their due process of law. George, would you please pray for my country? We used to lead the world in everything, George. Now we're a third world country and we have no credibility whatsoever. And we've got a president that's thank you, Father. That's a clown. Please pray for my country. Have a nice day, George.
Amen. I love the United States and its good people. I love its culture of music, its sport, and all my favorites are American. My favorite boxers, my favorite musical performers and songwriters, and so on. So it's not, when I say what I say, it's not because I hate America. It's quite the opposite. I hate what's being done to America. I hate what America has become. Thank you for a very succinct and powerful summary of Kristi Noem and the tendency, shall we call it, growing tendency of Trump administration officials to brazenly break the law. It may very well end up coming back on them. Now, coming up this Sunday on the Workers' Party social media channels, we have a wonderful thing called Call the Doctor. It's brilliant. I mean, Dr. Bob Gill and my parliamentary colleague Chris Williamson, they front it, but it's now getting a lot of attention, a lot of calls and so on. NHS On Call with Chris Williamson and Dr. Bob Gill. It's episode 8 of Call the Doctor, starts at 5 p.m. My old friend Terence in Reading has a view on the BBC and on Ireland. We need to hear it. He's a legend. On you go, Tel.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway, and I hope you and yours are very safe and God stay with you. 2 points. One is going to take you back slightly when you were fully aware of the store strike in the 1980s with Mary Manning, and she would refuse to handle the grapefruits of South Africa, and that triggered monumental strikes and everything. And the same thing is happening now. It's not on the news, you'd be surprised to learn. The same thing is happening in County Down in the north of the island of Ireland. A woman was suspended, sacked, but suspended for refusing to handle Israeli goods. As I call it, vile Israeli goods. BDS is working, and it's just about to start in Ireland. And sure. You mentioned Catherine Connolly. She's coming on board very soon. Her feet are under the table, and given Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, the two cheeks of the same buttocks, as you say, their time, I would like to think, is numbered. The second point, a student of mine rang me up last week. He said he's a French young boy, he's socialist in France. And his friend had worked on a program called Global Eye on the BBC, and he said, you must watch it. So I watched it, and it started off for 20 minutes. In the world on BBC Two, South African white farmers are apparently being killed regularly. We want to look into this. And the lady asking the question was obviously a South African of the colour of the majority, which would make it seem a bit sort of, it must be some truth here. We'll have a look. And it took nearly 30 minutes to interview a woman who'd gone there from England 20 odd years ago, and she blew it out of the water in one sentence. No, they come on our land to steal things. Don't feel fright or fear at all. So the BBC are covering everything they shouldn't be, i.e. the truth. You won't get happening Dunstore in the 80s, which I'm proud to say still makes my head tingle, and you remember it well, I know you do. And not only that, the narrative of the BBC is still feeding and scurrying away. They're still in the thrall of the Zionists. And they've been rumbled. What say you on both counts, Mr. Galloway?
Well, very powerful call. I can't better what you said about the Irish people's vanguard role in the struggle against apartheid in Duns and elsewhere. And the Irish people are again in the vanguard. I'm proud to be part Irish, and because I'm part Irish, I'm entitled to Irish citizenship, and I'm in the process of acquiring that now, as is my legal right. I'm very proud of Ireland and the long struggle for freedom in Ireland is not one that has allowed them to forget about other struggles for freedom elsewhere. They have been right at the front of the global campaign against another apartheid system, this one in Israel-Palestine. So everything you say about Ireland, I entirely accept. I'm so old. I was one of the very few people on the British left who travelled the length and breadth of apartheid South Africa undercover on behalf of the African National Congress, led by Oliver Tambo, and from prison by Nelson Mandela himself. It's one of my proudest achievements to have been, in a small way, a soldier in the fight for liberation in South Africa. And I recall very well the difficulty in Parliament when I finally got there in 1987. There were still people there standing openly supporting apartheid South Africa. Margaret Thatcher among them. I was there. I saw her lips move when she called President Mandela nothing more than a common terrorist. That's how old I am, till you and I go back down the lanes of memory, and I'm always grateful for that. Will is in California on Venezuela. Go ahead, Will.
Hey, good evening, George. It's so great to speak to you again. Are we in Venezuela for a war on drugs or a war on fishing boats? You know, our court system is bad enough, but allowing suspects to get their day, not to get their day in court is especially depressing. And Venezuela boats being destroyed in front of us should raise some unanswered questions. Here's the proof or confirmation for the public. You know, the War Department's posting videos of our mighty military obliterating board motorboats with open canopies. JD saying he doesn't give a crap about committing war crimes, and the War Department head Pete Hegseth any wrongdoing. It's one thing to skip due process, but it's another thing to skip to parade these pitiful video clips showing the outboard vessels with no visible cargo getting blown to smithereens, and then to go and kill two survivors clinging to the hull. And then after that, to pardon a real convicted drug lord just days later. Where's the due process?
Well, due process is important, and that's a major part of our critique here this evening, but it pales into insignificance with what are very clearly field executions. When there's no field, there's no battlefield, there's no war. There's no war resolution. There's no evidence that any of the people murdered on camera were armed. There is no evidence of who they were or what they were. It is in real time, on videotape, mass murder. There's now been dozens of people who may all have been entirely innocent of any crime, and we know several of them were entirely innocent of any crime, and not heading for the United States, but heading for an entirely different country in the opposite direction in one case. But it's not a capital crime to be running drugs from Latin America to the United States. You have to be tried. And if convicted, you will receive a severe sentence, but it will not be summary death delivered from the sky. It is an open and shut case that Hegseth and Trump, if he gave him the order, it is an open and shut case that Hegseth and the Admiral and everyone underneath them who carried out a flatly illegal order, they need to be charged with murder. And some of them will be. Take my word for that. Let me take a quick break. Then it's my good wife, Gayatri, joining me here in the studio. Stay tuned.
And it's a very, thank you for, I'm a big fan of your show, Gigi. Great debate, great. And I'm Scottish. I'm very passionate about what's happening there, I had a great mom. She was Scottish, Mary MacLeod. She taught me well. She taught me well at everything, including golf. I love Scotland, and I love the Scottish food. It's great food. I said to Melania, haggis. Look at that. What's more Scottish than that? Me. I am that haggis. She said, what, thin-skinned and full of crap?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
I laugh at that jingle every single week. I can't remember now who did the Donald Trump voice, but I think he's got him to a T. Well, that was my good friend MacLeod. Yes, thank you very much indeed for that inspiration in my ear. Now, the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. It's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, let's go to Southeast Asia because the region has, of course, recently been hit by a tropical cyclone causing devastation, affecting around 2 million people. And the destruction in infrastructure, in environment is giant and counting. Looking at the death toll alone, Sri Lanka has 600 plus, Malaysia 37, they're further south, Vietnam 100 plus, Thailand 185 plus, Indonesia nearing 1,000. It's the images that I see from Sumatra and in particular Aceh are harrowing because we all remember the 2004 tsunami that hit that region as well. And it was, the pictures are so alike. And Indonesia is suffering a lot from this. It can't cope because so many areas within Sumatra can still not be reached. No electricity. The people have risen. They're all coming up to collect money and have it sent. The government is doing what it's doing, but the national emergency has not been expressed, and therefore sufficient sources haven't been put in place. So
it looks like a national emergency to me.
It does look like it indeed. So here we have a picture of Aceh in 2004 and then this year. So similar and so scary.
Sorry for that.
Yes. Now, two things. Staying first with Indonesia, because the president, Prabowo, is today in Moscow.
He's with Putin.
He is meeting Putin. This is actually their third meeting this year already. And President Prabowo has only taken office just over a year ago, during the time that it joined BRICS when we were in Kazan. They've both hailed their friendship, their tightening relationship on trade, cultural, and everything. So it's looking very good in that sense. And the meeting was then finished with President Prabowo saying, surely, President Putin, you won't just go to India. You must come to Indonesia too.
Did he accept?
So, yes, he did. So they're looking at 2026. Maybe towards the end of it, but yes.
Well, perhaps we'll be in Indonesia then.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable because these relations, we have a long-standing relation, Russia and Indonesia, but the presidents meeting 3 times in a year so closely, not done before.
Well, he better watch out. They might come looking for him to give him some democracy and some colour in his revolution.
Yes.
You'll have to beware.
Beware.
That's how Imran Khan ended up behind bars.
We must always be aware of that external hand. So moving on to the other part of Southeast Asia, Thailand and Cambodia.
Oh my God!
That
was a war that Trump said he'd fixed.
Yes, but that seems to be on the brink right now. Today, the Cambodian delegates from the athletic team have withdrawn from the upcoming Southeast Asian Games due to concerns of the safeties of the athletes and their families. And this is, of course, because the tensions along the border, which is 800 kilometers long, there have always been borders, and in particular, it concerns this ancient old temple from the golden age of the Khmer Rouge, which was based on a French colonial map. And the dispute is prompted by that, or perhaps
but
more.
People are dying, right?
People are dying. So it started off with firing back and forth, but it's escalating. So this peace deal has not been held up.
Has Trump said anything on that? Because he told us he solved that war.
Yeah, well, he said today he's going to make a phone call. I don't know what happened since, but according to the latest reports, Thailand has mobilized its army towards its first city in Cambodia. Now, looking at Thailand and Cambodia, at first sight you would think Thailand is US-backed and Cambodia is a China ally. But perhaps it's not as black and white as we may think, because Cambodia has recently had a new prime minister who is a graduate. He's the son of the former prime minister, but more importantly, he's a graduate of West Point, the infamous U.S. military academy. And so Cambodia has been pivoting towards the West. They have allowed U.S. Army.
It's complicated. I mean, relationship complicated. As you know, I spent a long time in Cambodia. I was the chief election observer. I spent almost a month in the country.
Yes.
When everyone was trying to ensure the defeat of the father of the current prime minister, because he was regarded as pro-China, pro-Russia, leftist, though he was far from a leftist. And so you would have thought my sympathies would then be with Cambodia. And I loved the people of Cambodia. And I hate to see these bombs dropping on them. But you can't take a crude calculus. Because as you say, Cambodia has been pivoting. China has gigantic interests in Thailand. Thailand is a giant compared to Cambodia.
Yeah, they have the military advantage of having a royal air force.
They have an RAF, yes, and they're using it. They're dropping bombs.
It.
They've captured a city in Cambodia. So I think this is one of those conflicts where one's take on it has to be carefully calibrated and not for old time's sake.
No, because for old time's sake, Thailand is indeed a U.S. ally, but all their bases, they have recently been, throughout the years, actually as early as 2014, they have been replaced by Chinese and even Russian military equipment. So there is a very interesting...
Well, perhaps it's not Trump that has to pick up the phone and talk to two allies. It's the Chinese.
Yes.
Then why aren't they why isn't Xi Jinping on the phone?
Well, we all know why Trump was there in the first place, just like with any other peace deal that he brokered. He engineers it, and then so that he can tap into this Indo-Pacific region, of course. So what is China going to do? Xi Jinping is going to keep a close eye on this.
You would have thought so, for sure. Well, look, we're out of time. The show's been a good one. 2 terrific guests and some great calls.
Yeah.
So thanks to everyone for that. Any final words, Gayatri?
Just to continue last week's note of the Eurovision Song Festival. We're
Yeah.
celebrating it. We did say it was these countries and counting, and since the last episode, Iceland has now also joined.
Five European countries have pulled out,
Yes.
right?
So, good luck. Good luck holding a singing competition.
Yeah.
It will be Israel lasting and
with a
standing.
bit of luck, it'll only be Israel that will be in their Eurovision Song Contest, though Israel isn't, of course, in Eurovision.
Yes, let's end with the big donors of tonight's show.
Oh, yeah.
Who went to moats.tv or scanned the QR code right here on screen. And these are Felipe Roman, Neville Hamilton, Ryan Hamzawi, Patricia Williams, and Jan Fox. So, like them, go to the website or scan the QR code. Thank you so much for that.
MOATS.tv. It's been marvellous for us. I hope it was for you. We'll be back, God willing, on Sunday with the mothership, the original mother of all talk shows. And we'll tell you then what arrangements we're making over Christmas and the New Year. We'll not miss a beat. We'll not miss a show. I promise you that. But there will be special programs. See you on Sunday.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.